Hi guys, my name's Deb Marnie and I'm from Aussie Maille, and today in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how you can make our Rosettes and Romanov bracelet. Alright guys, let's get started. Okay, so this is a sample piece of the bracelet we'll be making today. Now this bracelet is approximately 20 centimeters in length or about 8 inches. So to make a bracelet of that size you're going to need the following components. So we're using bright aluminium jump rings in 18 gauge AWG, which is 1mm diameter wire, and these rings have an ID of 3.5mm. Now you're going to need approximately 280 of these rings in total, and you'll need about 72 of those rings to be pre-closed. Now if you don't want to pre-close them all at the beginning, that's fine, but you'll need at least 12 rings pre-closed for each European 4-in-1 section. You're also going to need some beads. These are 6mm bicone beads. These ones are Czech crystal, but you can use the Swarovskis or the Chinese glass bicones. As long as they're 6mm, that's fine. And you'll need 5 of those to complete the bracelet at that length. You're also going to need either eye pins or head pins or a bit of wire to put the beads on. You'll need them to be at least 3 centimeters long for each bead. So 5 pieces of wire or a head pin that's at least 3 centimeters long. Some sort of clasp. This is just one of our stainless steel 002 lobster clasps. So whatever clasp that you would like. A twist tie or a paper clip, something like that would also be very handy for this weave. As far as tools are concerned, you're going to need a pair of round nose pliers, a pair of wire cutters, and for the chainmail portion you're going to need 2 pairs of smooth jawed pliers. These are pliers from our Xuron range. This one is a chisel nose plier and this one here is a short nose plier. I'm going to start by showing you how to make up the beaded unit. Now for the bracelet that's approximately 20 centimeters in length, you're going to need 5 of these units made up. So I'm just going to use a plated head pin. If you don't have head pins but you have eye pins, you could use that, or you could use a piece of wire, depending on what you have. Now what I'm going to do, these head pins are actually 7 centimeters in length, which is approximately 2 3/4 inches, I believe. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the top of my head pin off, and then because they're so long, I'm actually going to cut this in half. So it's going to be about 3.5 centimeters in length, and I can use both of those pieces to make up 2 units. Okay, so you'll need a piece, if you're just using a piece of wire or an eye pin, you'll need one that's about at least 3 centimeters in length. Okay, so first step is to put a little loop in the first end. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so I've got 1 loop in there. But I'm going to be a little bit tricky. I'm actually going to take this around a couple of times like that. Okay, you can see that there. I like to do this with Romanov units because we're using Byzantine and all the rings in Byzantine are doubled. I like to have these ones doubled as well. But that's totally up to you if you don't like that look, but that's what I like to do. Okay, so once I've put a loop in my first end, I'm going to take up my bead, which is a 6mm bicone. This one is Czech crystal, but you could use Swarovskis or the Chinese glass bicones, whatever it is that you've got on hand, as long as they're 6mm. Okay, and then I've popped that on there, I've pushed it all the way down, and I'm going to make a loop on the other end. Okay, so I start to do that the same way. Okay, and I'm going to double loop this one as well. Okay, so we've got a couple of loops there. So you can see we've got a little bit of play here still in our bead, but what you can do is you can just continue to loop either end around until you've tightened up against the bead very nicely, like that. Okay, so you don't have to worry about whether or not you've cut it too short, because you can usually just come back in and tighten the ends up. Now you can see I haven't been very tricky here, and my loops are not aligned the same way. So if that's happened, just come in with your pliers and give one of those loops a little bit of a twist, okay, so that they both line up going in the same direction. Okay, so as I said, you'll need to make about 5 of those beaded units up to make the 20cm bracelet. Okay, so now we're going to start making the bracelet, and the first part of the bracelet are the European rosette sections. So I advise you to say pre-close 12 of your rings, and then once you've done that, take an open ring, feed on 2 of your closed rings, close your open ring up, then take a twist tie or a paper clip, whatever it is that you have on hand, and go through that single ring, give it a little twist. This gives you a much needed handle to hold on to while you're creating the rest of your weave. Okay, so we're just going to do a strip of European 4-in-1 first, that is 6 rows long. So once you've got your twist tie in place, hold onto your twist tie and position your rings just like you can see here. So imagine we've got a little mouse here, and these are his ears, and this ring here, this single ring in the middle, that's his forehead, and we want his forehead to be looking towards us when we're doing this. So once you've got your rings like that, take up another open ring, and we're going to feed that down through the front of the right ear. We're going to bring it up and around and come up through the back of the left ear. And then before we close this ring, we're going to grab 2 of our pre-closed rings. We're going to pop that on there, and then we're going to close it up. Okay? And then we position our rings again. So we've once again got our little mouse's ears and forehead looking at us, and we just continue those 3 steps until we've used up all our pre-closed rings. So again, down through the front of the ear on the right, bring it up around through the back of the ear on the left, okay? And then before you close that ring up, grab 2 pre-closed rings, pop those on, and then close your ring. Okay, and you just continue going like that. You reposition your ears, and we keep adding rings to it until we've used up all our pre-closed rings, or we have a total of 6 rows here. So I'm going to head and do that, and I'll meet you back here to show you what we do next. Okay, so I'm just about to add my last pair of pre-closed rings. So I'm going to pop those on, and I'm going to close that up. Okay, and you can see now that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows going up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take up one more open ring, and we're going to feed it through those 2 ears like we have been doing all along. But before we close this one, we're going to take up one of our beaded units, okay, and we're going to pop that onto the ring and then close that up. Okay, so this is what our work currently looks like. And then to make the rosettes, we're going to take an open ring, and we're going to go back down to the beginning of our weave, and we're going to put that ring through 1, 2, 3 of the rings there on the side, and then close that up. Okay, flip our work over so that we've got the rings on the other side, on our right hand side, if you're right-handed of course, and we're going to go through 1, 2, 3 rings again, okay, and close that up. And you can see that that's tightened that up a little bit. That's called a European 4-in-1 rosette, okay? So then we're just going to do that again to our last 3 or the other 3 rings in our European section. So 1, 2, 3, scoop them all up, okay, and then flip our work over and grab another ring and go through 3 rings on the other side. Okay, so that's what we've got so far. Okay, so now we need to finish off our Romanov unit, which is a Byzantine variant. And to do that, I'm going to take up one of our rings and I'm going to go through that ring there that the bead unit is hanging off. So this is where I'm going to build my first piece of Byzantine from. So we want to put 2 rings through there, okay, just like that. So we've got 2 rings hanging off that middle ring there, and we're going to put another pair and then another pair, so that we've got a total of 3 pairs of rings, which is standard for starting Byzantine. If you've done Byzantine before, you know that we always work in 3 pairs of rings. Okay, so we've got one more ring to add. There you go. So there's our chain of 2, 2, 2 coming off that middle ring there. Now this is fiddly because we've got beads and things in the way, but we're just going to basically create Byzantine. So to do that, we're going to flip this end pair of rings all the way back, okay, and we're going to hold those rings against our chain, and then we're going to separate this end pair here, and you can see through here, this little gap through here, this is where we're going to put our next ring, okay, so straight through that gap just there. Alright, so taking up an opened ring, we feed that through there, picking up both of those rings there that were exposed in the middle, closing that up, and repeating with a second ring, okay, through the same spot so that we've got double. We always work with doubled rings with Byzantine. Okay, so there we've got half of our Byzantine unit in place. So to continue with that, we take up another opened ring and we feed it through that last pair of rings there. Okay, and we're going to create another chain of 3 pairs. So this pair of rings here from our last step is the first set. These rings I'm adding are the second set in the chain, and then we're going to add one more pair of rings to the end of this. Okay, one more. Okay, so there we've got our 3 pairs of rings again, 1, 2, 3, and as before we're going to fold back that end pair of rings, so there's 1 each side, pinch them against the chain, separate out those rings there forming that V so that you can see that gap there, and that's where we're going to place our next rings. We're going to go straight through that gap, picking up the 2 rings that are there, okay, So we've got one in place. We're going to place one more ring. Okay. And that there is our completed Byzantine unit. Okay, so once we've got our first Byzantine section made, we're going to make another Byzantine section on the other side of the bead. So again, we're going to take up an open ring, we're going to feed it straight through that middle ring there. Okay, close it up. We're going to double that up, because again with Byzantine, we're always working in pairs of rings. Okay. So there's 2, and we want to make, if you remember, a chain of 2, 2, 2. So 3 pairs of rings. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so 1. Okay, so that's our second pair placed. Now one more pair. So we've got our 3 pairs of starting rings that we wanted, and we're going to flip back that last pair of rings again, so we've got 1 on each side. Move your bead as best as you can. This is fiddly, but it's not too difficult to do. So squeeze them so they're all the way back. Separate those rings there on top that are making a V, so you can see that gap there underneath. Taking up another opened ring, feed it through that gap there so that you go through and pick up both of those rings that you folded back. Okay, do that up, and then place a second ring through the same path. Okay, so that we've got 2 rings sitting in there. Okay, so we've got half a Byzantine unit going on there now. So we want to create the rest, and again we want to start with our chain of 3 pairs of rings. These rings that we just placed become our first pair of rings, so we need to place 2 more pairs in there. So there's our first ring, second ring of our second pair. Now 1 more pair coming off that, because we want a chain of 2, 2, 2. Okay, so 1 and 1 more. Okay, so there's our chain of 3 pairs of rings. Again, we want to flip that last pair all the way back, pinch them against the side of our chain. We want to separate out these rings here that form that V on top, because we want to expose this space that goes straight down here. Okay, that's what we're looking for, because our next ring is going to go through that space, picking up both of the rings that we just folded back. See that? We've got both of those rings. We're going to close that ring up, and taking up a second ring, feeding it through the same space so that everything is doubled. And you've finished your second Byzantine unit. So we've got a Byzantine unit sitting either side of our bead. Okay, so our next step is to put a ring through here and join all this up. Before you do that though, I suggest taking or pre-closing 12 of your small rings if you haven't pre-closed them already, and then taking up an opened ring, making sure that our Byzantine units are both sitting flat and the same way. Put your small ring through one end of the Byzantine unit, through the ring, through the loop that you made on the beaded unit, and then through the other part of the other Byzantine unit. Now we're not done yet, we're not going to close this yet, because we're going to start building our European 4-in-1 off here again. So what we're going to do now is take up 2 of these pre-closed rings, pop them on, and then close this up. Now this is quite tight, there's not a lot of room there, so you will have to be careful with what you do. And there you've got what is basically our mouse ears again, with our forehead looking at us. So as we did before, we're going to take up an open ring and we're going to go down through the front of the mouse ear on the right, up through the back of the mouse ear on the left, and then before we're finished, we're going to pop on 2 of our pre-closed rings and we're going to close that up. Okay, so we're going to continue doing that as we did before until we've got 6 rows total of European 4-in-1 in there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now off camera, and then I will come back to show you what we do next. Okay, so I'm just about to place the last pair of pre-closed rings in our European section. Okay, so I'm just going to close that up as I normally would and flip the rings to form the ears. And then before I finish this up, I'm going to take another opened ring. I'm going to go down through the ears as I have been doing, but instead of adding the pre-closed units, I'm now going to add another beaded unit, making sure that it's facing the same way as the one that I've already put in place. So with this one, that means the loops are on the bottom, not on the top like this. That's the way I like to have it. So I'm going to pop that on there and close my ring up, and that's prepping the way for the next Romanov unit. But I still need to convert this into the rosettes, so to do that I'm picking up an open ring. I'm going to go back down to the beginning and I'm going to scoop up 1, 2, 3, just like I did before, close that up, flip it over to the other side, do the same on the other side of the first section, 1, 2, 3. Okay, close it up, and then do the same for the remaining 3 rows. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now if you wanted to jazz this up, make it a little bit more interesting, you could perhaps pop a bead, a seed bead, a tiny seed bead on this ring that you're putting on the outer edges to give a little bit more colour to your piece. You could even double that ring up and perhaps Mobius it if you wanted to. There's a couple of different things you could do there. Okay, so this is what our piece currently looks like. And then we just, again, as we did down here, we start building our Byzantine units to go around our bead. And we just keep doing that until we've reached the length that we require, finishing up with a European 4-in-1 section like you started. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you back here, guys, to show you the clasp attachment. Okay, so as I'm going through making up the bracelet, I just thought I'd show you an alternative step that you could do if you were struggling with the step of adding those pre-closed rings to start your European 4-in-1. So just say you're here at the finishing off the Romanov, so we just finish that off as we normally would. And in the previous step, I suggested that you add 2 pre-closed rings, but there isn't a lot of room here. So if you're struggling with that and you don't want to add 2 pre-closed rings, then just close that ring up there, just like that, without the rings, and then taking up 2 opened rings, feed them through that ring that you just added, okay, and then they become your first pair of mouse ears. Okay, so you can see that they then become your ears, and you can build your European 4-in-1 section along as you normally would with your pre-closed rings. Anyway, I hope that helps. Okay, so I've just finished adding the last pair of rings in our last section of European 4-in-1. And to finish this section off, as we have been, I'm just going to put a single ring through the ears, and this time I'm not going to add anything. No pre-closed rings, no beaded units. I'm just going to finish it up like that. And then of course we're going to turn this into rosettes, so taking out an open ring and going through those first three there, and then going through the next 3. Okay, turn our work over to the other side and do the same on the other side, going through 3, closing the ring. Okay, and placing our last ring, going through 3, closing the ring. Okay, so that's your finished bracelet. And to add the clasps now, I'm just going to add a lobster clasp. And to do that, I'm just going to take up another opened ring. I'm going to feed it through that last ring that we placed. And then before I close that, I'm just going to pop that ring on, or the clasp on. Okay. And then on the other end, I'm going to remove the twist tie. And I'm going to put an additional ring down there for us to close the clasp onto. You may want to make a chain of rings to do that. A little chain with maybe a wrapped bicone hanging off the end on a head pin would look really lovely. But that's it basically. Just close the clasp up. And that's your Rosettes and Romanov bracelet. Okay guys, well that's our bracelet tutorial for today. I hope you enjoyed making the bracelet with me. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to give us a thumbs up here on YouTube, comment, share our video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. Every little bit of interaction we have with you guys does go a long way towards helping us and our channel, and it encourages us to make more videos like this for you in the future. If you do have any questions or comments about this video, leave them in the comment section below the video and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Don't forget to check out the description section. In there we've got the links to our online store where you'll be able to buy the components and tools that we used in today's video, along with a whole lot of other stuff. Check it out, I'm sure you'll be pleased you did. In the description is also the list of all the components we used, so if you missed writing that down at the beginning, don't worry about it, we've got it written down for you. We've also got our social media links there as well, so if you want to check us out on Instagram or on Facebook, click on a link and see what we're up to. We'd love to see what you guys are doing with these tutorials, so don't forget to tag us on Instagram or even pop your photo up on our Facebook wall. We'd love to catch up with you. Alright guys, so as I said, I really hope that you enjoyed this video today and that we'll be seeing you again sometime in the future. Okay, bye!